Hi.
How are you?
I'm fine. I'm Peter.
Nice to meet you, Peter. Wow.
Welcome to Gettysburg. This is where George Washington Eliot saw fighting. And he fought right here where we're standing.
That's great.
It is, yeah. It's pretty amazing. So this is where George's regiment took extraordinary casualties. And this little valley below us was called the Valley of Death.
Oh, boy.
On July 1st, 1863, the Confederate Army made a bold attempt to invade the North, clashing with Union forces near Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. At first, scattered Union defenses struggled to hold off the advancing Confederates. But by the second day of fighting, Union General George Meade had assembled the full might of his army, including George Eliot's regiment, the 12th U.S. Infantry, who marched over the hill to face the Confederate troops in the valley below.
Everything was sort of hanging in the balance when Eliot's regiment appeared on the scene.
So what was happening here with the other side?
So the Confederate soldiers were behind you, was lurking off into those woods.
Okay.
And so Eliot and his comrades came over this ridgeline, and then suddenly they hear coming out of the woods these howling screams of Confederate soldiers. The Confederates were noted for what was called the rebel yell. You need to imagine it's a kaleidoscope of images. You have thousands of men rushing towards us. A great crash of musketry, artillery fire, tremendous amount of smoke, bullets whizzing by, men are falling.
So George is still alive through all of this?
Yeah.
So he did walk away?
He walked away.
That's wild.
He walked away.
Wow. Is it luck? Is it, I mean, I can't even imagine in that moment. Bullets whizzing all around you and you're sort of still alive.
After intense fighting and heavy losses for both sides, the Union Army finally forced the Confederates to retreat. When the shooting stopped, 7,000 men lay dead at Gettysburg, and 33,000 more were wounded. It was the bloodiest battle of the entire Civil War, but ultimately a victory for the Union. George Washington Eliot was part of this crucial battle, which represented a key turning point in the war.
We do have, not from George, but from one of his comrades, a man named Charles Bowen, a letter about the fighting right here. Yeah, it's cool. He's in the same regiment.
My dear wife and friends, we have been marching almost night and day to come up with the rebel invaders. And now I am writing this letter on the battleground with hundreds of dead, unburied corpses of both rebels and Union men lying around me. Oof. Our loss has been heavy in officers and men. Our regiment lost 109 men out of 450 and several officers. I have just come in from a visit to the field, and for acres and acres of ground the dead lie thick. This is the greatest 4th of July I ever spent, but far from the most pleasant. Ever your fond and faithful husband, Charlie. Oh, wow.
I think it speaks to George. I think it speaks to how he had to come to terms with this as well. The day after the battle, George is walking amongst us, amongst the Union and Confederate dead. The images here, they're
you
so
can't
violent,
ever
they're so
recover
horrific.
from that.
And the sounds.
You're changed for life.
You're changed forever. And so if you look, out into this valley and imagine George here and imagine him walking away from Gettysburg, knowing that he was, in the eyes of his comrades, a full soldier. He had now shouldered a musket. And as we know, he was a man of color. Now, his comrades probably didn't know that.
But he knew that.
Yes. But knowing also the attitudes toward African Americans amongst Union soldiers was far from charitable. There were plenty of white Northerners who believed slavery was wrong. Most did not.
Right.
Most had the most vile attitudes toward African Americans.
It must have been quite personal for him because his father was an indentured servant as well, to be fighting against the South and all that they stood for. Maybe all along he wanted to fight for who he was and what he believed in. And what's so crazy for me is that he is someone that my family doesn't know about at all. We know so much about other parts of the family, but not this incredible, beautiful, brave man.
So what is this document?
This is a document that gives you a little clue about what happened after the war. This was an application to get federal support for injuries that he sustained during the war.
Declaration for Original Invalid Pension.
Yes.
On this 29th day of January, 1890, so 1890.
Now
It
we
says
know
he was age 52.
age 52.
So it says quite a bit
Yes.
if he was 25
Yeah.
when
So
he was fighting.
he lived a good many years after the war.
Wow. Oh, and it says musician. He is now partly disabled.
Yeah. Not you
Oh,
only
his
see his signature, which is cool.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And there you have it.
So he's moved to Schuylerville in Saratoga, New York. Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you
All right.
so much.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
There's so many parts of this story that are just so incredible and completely blowing my mind. I feel so proud of George. I just keep thinking about what it must have been like for him to be of mixed race, to know who his father was, and that he was sort of, I guess, hiding a little bit in this war of all these white men around him and fighting side by side with him. But underneath all of that, there would have been more meaning for him in the war. That must have been so powerful for him.